I was scrubbing the granite countertop when the investor asked who I was. My daughter stepped in front of me, blocking his view with her expensive blazer. "That's just our facilities staff," she said smoothly. "We outsource cleaning to keep costs low." She snapped her fingers at me to fetch water. She didn't tell him I was her mother. She didn't tell him I was the seed investor who had sold my own business to fund her startup. She just handed me a dirty rag and told me to be invisible. But as I stood in the janitor's closet an hour later, staring at the email she had left open on her laptop, the one calling me a charity case and an awkward explanation, I realized that invisibility was a weapon. And if she wanted a cleaning lady, I was going to clean house. I stumbled upon the laptop completely by accident, or maybe it was destiny at play, guiding me toward the heartbreak I needed to see. There it sat, Stella's sleek MacBook, wide open on the mahogany conference room table, its screen glowing softly in the dim morning light of the office. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the gray Atlantic Ocean churned against the docks of the Boston seaport, the water looking as cold and unforgiving as the glass and steel building I was currently standing in. I had come in early to wipe down the table before the 9 a.m. board meeting, my spray bottle of organic cleaner in one hand and a microfiber cloth in the other. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew the rules of my employment. Be invisible, be silent, and be helpful. But my own name caught my eye in the preview text of an open email draft. After 4 months of scrubbing toilets in a company I had funded with $750,000 of my own hard-earned money, I felt entitled to know what my daughter thought of me. I leaned in closer, my breath fogging the air slightly as I read the words on the screen. Subject: Operations Staff Performance Review. To HR Director. My mom is working out fine for basic facilities tasks, but she's slow and doesn't understand the tech culture here. It's becoming an issue. If clients or investors ask who she is, please stick to the script. Say she's contracted help and not family. It's awkward explaining why my mother works here as cleaning staff. Keep her in background roles. Do not schedule her during client-facing hours unless absolutely necessary. Contracted help. Background roles. Awkward explanations. Each word struck me like a physical blow to the chest, knocking the wind out of me. I read it 3 times, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something kinder and something that sounded like the daughter I raised, but the sting didn't lessen. My hands began to shake violently, and I had to grip the cold edge of the table to steady myself, dropping the microfiber cloth onto the pristine floor. This was my daughter, the baby I had carried through multiple jobs, and the child I raised alone after her father walked out when I was 6 months pregnant. This was the college student I supported while building my own business in stolen hours at night, and the entrepreneur I funded by selling everything I had built over 28 years. And now, to her, I was just an awkward explanation. I was a stain on her brand that needed to be managed. I carefully closed the laptop, wiping away the smudge my finger had left on the metal casing. Then I walked to the supply closet down the hall, closed the door, and sank onto an overturned bucket nestled between mops and jugs of industrial cleaner. The smell of bleach and lemon polish filled the tiny dark space, the scent of my new life. I started sobbing. I sobbed so hard my ribs ached, my throat burned, and my whole body shook with the force of the betrayal. I was 62 years old, a former owner of $1 million strategic consultancy firm, a woman who had once commanded boardrooms in this very city. And here I was, hiding in a janitor's closet in the Seaport District, and crying over an email from my own daughter, the daughter who found me too embarrassing to admit I was her mother. But this wasn't where my story began. To understand how I came to be cleaning toilets for $8 an hour in a company valued at $5 million, one I had built with my own money, you need to know how the trap was set. It didn't start with malice. It started, as most tragedies do, with a mother's blind trust. 6 months earlier, I had found myself in the break room of my daughter's tech company, wearing a generic gray clean apron that reeked of commercial sanitizer. My hands, once manicured and used to signing contracts, were raw and red from scrubbing coffee stains off the white granite countertops. I was elbow deep in a sink full of dirty mugs while 320-somethings stood behind me, grumbling about the kombucha tap being out of the ginger berry flavor. They didn't lower their voices. Why would they? To them, I wasn't a person. I was just the mechanism that made the dishes disappear. Then the double doors swung open, and the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Stella walked in. She looked every inch the CEO, wearing a tailored blazer I had bought her for her 30th birthday, her hair blown out to perfection, radiating the sharp, aggressive confidence of the new Boston tech scene. She was accompanied by 3 investors in expensive suits, men who smelled of cedar and old money. One of them, a tall man with silver hair and a Patek Philippe watch that likely cost more than my first house, paused near the sink. He looked at me, then at Stella. "Who's this?" he asked, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied my face. "She looks a whole lot like you, Stella. The eyes, specifically. Is she your mother? Someone mentioned you're a family business." My heart stopped, then raced. This was the moment. This was the moment Stella would finally acknowledge me. She would smile and say, "Yes, this is my mother, Verna Hollis. She's the reason this company exists. She's helping us out during the transition." I straightened up, drying my hands on my apron, ready to smile and ready to shake his hand. But Stella didn't smile. Her expression went blank, a smooth mask of indifference sliding over her features. She took a subtle step to the left, positioning herself to block me from their view, physically erasing me from the conversation. "No," she said smoothly, her voice not wavering for a second. "That's just our facilities staff." The air left my lungs. She didn't even glance my way as she continued, pivoting back to the investor. "We outsource cleaning to independent contractors to keep our overhead low. Lean operations are key to our Q3 strategy." The silver-haired man nodded approvingly, losing interest in me instantly. "That's smart. Every dollar counts in the early stages. Good discipline." "Exactly." Stella agreed. And then, as if to prove just how little I mattered, she turned to me. She didn't use my name, didn't use the tone a daughter uses with a mother. She used the tone a master uses with a servant. "Excuse me," she said, snapping her fingers slightly to get my attention. "Can you grab us some sparkling water from the back fridge? The San Pellegrino, not the store brand. We save the good stuff for our partners." The store brand I had purchased with my own money the week before because Stella had told me the company was watching expenses. Facility staff, outsourced cleaning, not my mother. I was just a prop in her play of efficiency. The silver-haired investor glanced at me one last time, yet his eyes slid past, barely registering my existence. The woman next to him, wearing a sharp blazer, abandoned her empty coffee cup on the counter near me, not in the trash can 3 feet away, and turned back to Stella without a word. I opened my mouth to speak. I wanted to say, "I'm Verna Hollis. I built Hollis Strategic, and I wrote the check that paid for this granite countertop." But Stella's eyes caught mine for a fleeting second. The warning in them was unmistakable. It was cold, hard, and terrifying. Don't. Don't embarrass me. Don't complicate this, and don't ruin this for me. Just don't exist right now. My throat tightened, and the words died on my tongue. The habit of protecting her, of putting her needs above my dignity, was too deeply ingrained. "Of course," I managed to choke out, my voice rough. "Right away, Miss Hollis." My legs felt unsteady as I walked to the back storage room. The cold air from the walk-in refrigerator hit me, chilling the sweat on my neck. I pulled out 4 glass bottles of San Pellegrino. My hands shook so badly I had to lean against the wire shelving, nearly dropping the bottles. They were cold and slick against my palms. I stood there for a moment in the dark, holding expensive water for people who didn't even know I existed, trying to remember how to breathe. Facilities staff. When I returned to the break room, I found them laughing. Stella was animated, code switching into the version of herself she showed investors, the visionary leader who had built everything from nothing. I set the bottles down on the table carefully, one by one, my hands trembling. Water droplets slid down the green glass, pooling on the granite I'd scrubbed that very morning. "Thank you," the silver-haired man said absently, reaching for a bottle without looking at me. The others didn't even seem to acknowledge my presence at all. I backed out of the room, clutching my empty tray. As I reached the door, I heard Stella's voice float out into the hallway. "The thing about building a successful company," she was saying, "is knowing what to outsource and what to keep in-house. Some things just aren't worth your time or energy. You have to cut the dead weight to let the eagle fly." The investors murmured in agreement. I understood what she meant. I wasn't the eagle. I was the dead weight. I stood in the hallway, surrounded by the hum of servers and the chatter of young tech workers, staring at my reflection in the glass wall of the conference room. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to confront a thought I'd been pushing away for months. My daughter wasn't just using me because she was desperate. She was enjoying it. She liked seeing Verna Hollis, the woman who had cast such a large shadow over her life, reduced to a servant. I walked back to the supply closet, sat on my bucket, and pulled out my phone. My hands were still trembling, but a new feeling was rising in my chest, a cold, sharp clarity. I opened my banking app. Deposit? $320, $8 an hour. That was my wage. After taxes, it barely covered my gas to drive into the city. Then I opened my browser. I typed in the business registry website I'd been avoiding, the one that tracked venture capital valuations in the Boston area. I searched for Stella Hollis Tech Solutions. My finger hovered over the enter button before I pressed it and held my breath as the page loaded. Current valuation, $5.2 million. I read it 3 times. $5 million. My daughter's company was worth $5 million. She had told me last week that cash flow was tight and she couldn't afford to pay me more than minimum wage until Q3. Stella drove a Tesla Model S, the titanium gray one parked in the reserved spot downstairs. She took clients to steakhouses in the North End that cost more than I made in a month. She posted Instagram photos from wineries on Martha's Vineyard, always smiling, always polished, and always with the hashtag self-made. And here I was, scrubbing her toilets for $8 an hour. Just then, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from Stella. From Stella, "Mom, the executive bathroom needs a deep clean before the board meeting at 3. Someone missed a spot on the mirror. Can you stay late tonight? I'm hosting investors for dinner in the private dining room. I need someone to serve and clean up after so we don't have to wait for the catering staff. Thanks." No please. No asking if I was tired. No checking if I had plans. Just orders. From daughter to mother. From CEO to janitor. I looked at the text, looked at the bucket of dirty mop water next to my feet, and realized then that the woman who had built Hollis Strategic Group was dead. I had killed her to save my daughter. But sitting there in the dark, smelling of bleach and betrayal, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I could bring her back to life. Because if Stella wanted contracted help, she was about to find out exactly how expensive a good consultant really was. To understand the magnitude of the lie, you have to understand the woman I was 18 months ago. I wasn't a janitor. I wasn't a facilities manager. I sat in a corner office on the 34th floor of a tower on State Street, overlooking the historic rooftops of Boston. I had floor-to-ceiling windows, a mahogany desk that cost more than a Honda Civic, and awards on my walls from marketing campaigns that had changed entire industries. I was Verna Hollis, CEO of Hollis Strategic Group. I had spent 28 years building something from nothing and fighting my way up in a city that wasn't kind to single mothers without trust funds. Then the phone rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The rain was lashing against the glass, blurring the city below into a watercolor of gray and slate. Stella's name flashed on the screen. I answered, expecting a quick check-in. Instead, I heard sobbing. Not the soft crying of a bad day, but the guttural, gasping panic of someone watching their life burn down. "Mom, I'm drowning," she choked out. "The company is failing. The seed investors pulled out last week. I can't make payroll, and I'm 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. Everything I've worked for, it's dying, Mom. And I don't know what to do." My chest tightened. This was my daughter, my only child. "How much do you need?" I asked, my voice calm, slipping instantly into crisis management mode. $750,000, she whispered. "I know it's a lot. I know I'm asking for everything. But Mom, if I can just make it through this quarter, we'll be profitable. I have contracts ready to sign, 3 major clients waiting in the wings. I just need bridge funding to survive until they close." I stared out at the Boston skyline, contemplating that number. $750,000. That was almost everything. That was my retirement fund, my safety net, the money I had scraped together to ensure I would never be poor again. But this was Stella. I remembered the nights I had worked until 3 a.m. while she slept in a playpen under my desk because I couldn't afford daycare. I remembered the way she looked at me when she graduated from business school, promising she would build something even bigger than I had. "Mom," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please, I'll lose everything." "I'll handle it," I said. I didn't just write a check. I liquidated my life. I called my business broker that afternoon. I pushed through a sale of Hollis Strategic Group that I had been debating for a year. I sold it for $900,000, a fire sale price, far under market value, but it was a fast cash deal. I didn't negotiate. I didn't wait for a better offer. My daughter was drowning, and I needed a lifeline now. 2 weeks later, the wire transfer went through, and I sent $750,000 to Stella Hollis Tech Solutions. I kept $150,000 for myself. It wasn't enough to retire comfortably in Boston, but it was a cushion. I told myself I could always consult on the side. I sent her a text. "It's done. The wire is sent. Breathe, honey. You're safe." I waited for a call. I waited for tears of relief. I waited for a "Thank you, Mom. You saved my life." Her response came through 3 minutes later. It was a single emoji, a thumbs up. I stared at that tiny yellow thumb on my screen for 10 minutes. I told myself she was probably busy or overwhelmed with relief, and that gratitude doesn't always look like a Hallmark card. But deep down, a small, cold stone of doubt settled in my stomach. 3 months passed. I heard from Stella only a handful of times. Brief texts, vague responses about being swamped. Every time I suggested lunch, she had a conflict. Every time I asked about the quarterly numbers, she ghosted me. Finally, she agreed to coffee. I arrived at the cafe in the Seaport District 15 minutes early. It was one of those trendy, industrial chic places with exposed brick and espresso machines that looked like spaceship engines. I ordered her favorite drink, an oat milk cortado with 2 pumps of vanilla, and sat by the window, watching the wind whip pedestrians' coats around their legs. I waited and waited. Stella showed up 42 minutes late. She didn't apologize, didn't hug me. She just walked in wearing oversized sunglasses and talking on her AirPods, holding up a finger to silence me before I had even said hello. She slid into the chair opposite me, tapped her ear to end the call, and sighed. A long, dramatic exhale of someone carrying the weight of the world. "Sorry," she said, not looking at me, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. "Insane morning. The development team is useless." "It's okay," I said, pushing the now lukewarm coffee toward her. I wanted to see you. We haven't talked about the company, about the investment." Stella stopped typing. She looked up, and for the first time, I saw a flash of irritation in her eyes. The investment? She repeated. Yes, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I gave you $750,000, Stella. I just want to know how it's being deployed. I haven't seen a shareholder report. She laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was a harsh, sharp sound that made the barista look over. Mom, seriously? She said, shaking her head. Can we not do this right now? Do what? This thing where you act like you own me, she snapped. That money wasn't an investment, Mom. It was a gift. It's like paying for college. You helped me out because you're my mother. You don't get to call it an investment now and act like you're a board member. The air left the table. A gift? I whispered. Stella, I sold my company for that money. I live in a one-bedroom condo now. I sent you a business plan markup, and you promised to pay me back with interest once you hit profitability. I was desperate, she hissed, leaning in. I said what I needed to say to stop the bleeding. Look, I appreciate it. I do. But you chose to sell your company. I didn't force you. And honestly, your entitlement right now is exhausting. Entitlement. I sat there, stunned, watching my daughter sip the coffee I had bought her, realizing that to her, my sacrifice was just a resource she had consumed and discarded. I need to know we're okay, I said, my voice trembling. I need to know that money didn't just disappear. If it's gone, I don't have anything left, Stella. Stella looked at me. She studied my face, her eyes narrowing. She saw the fear. She saw the hurt. And then her expression changed. The irritation vanished, replaced by a look of sudden, calculated vulnerability. She looked around the cafe to make sure no one was listening, then leaned across the table, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. You're right, she said softly. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm terrified. Terrified of what? I asked, leaning in. I think someone is stealing from me, she lied. I didn't know it was a lie then. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. What do you mean? The numbers aren't adding up, Stella whispered, her eyes wide and fearful. Expenses are inflated. Client data is leaking. I think I have a mole. Someone in the office is sabotaging the company from the inside. Who? I don't know, she said, gripping my hand. That's the problem. I can't trust my managers. I can't trust HR. If I bring in an outside auditor, it will spook the investors and the valuation will tank. I need someone on the inside, someone I can trust implicitly. She looked at me with those big, pleading eyes, the same eyes that had convinced me to buy her a car, to pay for her MBA, and to sell my business. I need you, Mom. My heart swelled. I can come on as a consultant, I said immediately. I can audit the books, and I can interview the staff. Stella shook her head frantically. No, if you come in as a consultant, they'll know. They'll clean up their tracks, and the mole will go underground. She paused, biting her lip. I have a crazy idea, she said. But it's the only way this works. I need you to be invisible. I need you to be in the rooms where people talk when they think no one is listening. What are you saying? Come work for me, she said. But not as Verna Hollis, the strategist. Come in as support staff, operations, facilities. I blinked. You want me to be a janitor? I want you to be a spy, she corrected, squeezing my hand. Think about it. No one pays attention to the cleaning lady. No one lowers their voice when the woman refilling the coffee is in the room. You can go through the trash. You can listen to the break room gossip. You can be my eyes and ears on the ground. She made it sound like a mission, like we were partners in a high-stakes game of corporate espionage. It's temporary, she promised. 90 days, just until we find the leak. I can't pay you your consultant rate because it would raise red flags, but I'll put you on the payroll at $15 an hour so it looks legit. It's not about the money, Mom. It's about saving the legacy you helped me build. I looked at my daughter and saw a young CEO in trouble and turning to the only person she could trust. I saw a chance to be useful again, to prove that my value hadn't ended when I sold my company. I fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Okay, I said. I'll do it. Stella smiled. It was a radiant and relieved smile. "Thank you, Mom," she said. "You're always the only one I can count on." On my first day, I arrived at the Glass and Steel building in the Seaport District, wearing a sensible pair of slacks and a silk blouse. I figured even as support staff, I could look professional. I met Stella in the lobby. She frowned immediately. "What are you wearing?" she asked. "Business casual? You said operations." "Right, here." She reached into a canvas tote bag and pulled out a garment. It was a shapeless gray polo shirt with Stella Hollis Tech Solutions Facilities embroidered in cheap white thread on the breast pocket. She didn't hand it to me. She tossed it. I caught it reflexively, the rough fabric scratching my palms. "Change into this," she said. "The bathroom is down the hall to the left." "Stella," I lowered my voice. "Is this necessary? I can just wear." "The mole needs to believe it, Mom," she whispered, her eyes hard. "If you look like a consultant, they'll treat you like one. If you want to catch them, you have to disappear. Put on the shirt." I went to the bathroom, took off my silk blouse, and put on the gray polo. It was 2 sizes too big. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a spy. I looked like a tired 62-year-old woman who had fallen on hard times. I swallowed my pride, told myself it was for the mission, and walked back out. Stella was standing by the reception desk with a young man holding a clipboard. "Great," she said, not looking me in the eye. "This is Tyler, the office manager. He has your task list." She turned to Tyler. "Treat her like any other new hire. No special treatment. We need the facility spotless for the investors next week." Then she walked away, got into the elevator, and went up to her glass-walled office, leaving me standing on the linoleum in my gray polo. Tyler didn't smile. He shoved the clipboard at me. "Here's the list," he mumbled, scrolling on his phone. I looked at the paper. Inventory supply closet. Restock coffee station, pods, cream, and sugar. Hourly bathroom checks, clean toilets and restock paper. Empty trash bins, all cubicles. Vacuum main floor. Wipe down glass walls. I stared at the words, clean toilets. "There must be a mistake," I said to Tyler. "I'm here for operations strategy," Tyler laughed. He didn't look up from his phone. "Operations is cleaning, lady. The executive bathroom on the 4th floor is backed up. Start there. Stella hates it when it smells." I stood there, the noise of the busy office swirling around me. I looked for Stella. I saw her up on the mezzanine, laughing with a group of developers. She wasn't looking for a mole. She wasn't worried about security. She was drinking an iced latte and basking in her power. And I was here, holding a toilet brush. I should have walked out then. I should have thrown the clipboard on the floor and marched out the door. But the seed of doubt Stella had planted, "I need you, Mom," had deep roots. I convinced myself this was part of the cover and that the indignity was the price of saving her company. So I went to the 4th floor. I entered the executive bathroom, got on my knees, and I started to scrub. The first month was a masterclass in invisibility. I had spent 28 years commanding rooms. When Verna Hollis walked into a meeting, people sat up straighter. They put away their phones and they listened. But in the ecosystem of Stella Hollis Tech Solutions, wearing a gray polo shirt 2 sizes too big, I ceased to be a person. I became an object, a Roomba with a pulse. The Boston winter dragged on, tracking gray slush and rock salt into the lobby every morning. My job, ostensibly, was to find the mole. I took it seriously. While I vacuumed the carpets, I listened for hushed conversations. While I emptied the recycling bins, I checked for shredded documents that shouldn't have been discarded. I was playing the part of the undercover agent, convincing myself that the indignity was just camouflage. But the staff didn't treat me like a mystery to be solved. They treated me like a fixture to be avoided. It wasn't the open cruelty of high school bullies. It was worse. It was the polite and professional erasure of the modern corporate world. It started with the name. There was a project manager named Priya, a sharp, ambitious young woman in her 20s who sat near the kitchen. On my third day, I was wiping down the counter next to her. "Excuse me," she said, not looking up from her iPad. "Lucy, can you refill the napkin dispenser? It's empty." I paused, the spray bottle heavy in my hand. "My name is Verna," I said gently. Priya glanced at me, her eyes sliding over my face without registering it. "Oh," she said, already turning back to her screen. "The last cleaning lady was named Lucy. It's just a habit. Do we have napkins or not?" She didn't apologize. She didn't correct herself. To her, Lucy wasn't a name. It was a job title. It was the label for the person who brought the napkins. From that day on, I was Lucy. Not just to Priya, but to the developers, the interns, and the sales team. Even when I corrected them, they would just nod vacantly and forget 5 minutes later. Why bother memorizing the name of someone who didn't matter? The cruelty was in the silence. I would walk into the break room and conversation would stop. Not because they were hiding secrets, but because my presence made them uncomfortable. They would stare at their phones until I finished mopping, then resume talking the moment the door clicked shut. I held doors open for people who walked through without saying thank you. I cleaned up spilled smoothies that people stepped over without breaking stride. One Tuesday, during a particularly heavy snowstorm, the San Pellegrino incident happened. I was in the break room, restocking the fridge. Priya was there with 2 other associates, laughing about a weekend trip to Cape Cod. As she turned, her oversized tote bag knocked a glass bottle of sparkling water off the counter. It shattered on the tile floor. Green glass and carbonated water exploded everywhere, splashing onto my uniform and soaking my canvas sneakers. The room went silent. I stood there, water dripping from my hem, waiting for a "sorry" or "are you okay?" Priya looked at the mess. Then she looked at her boots to make sure they weren't wet. "Ugh," she sighed, stepping gingerly over a shard of glass. "That's dangerous. Someone needs to clean that up before a lawsuit happens." She looked at me. She didn't say clean it. She just waited. The expectation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I looked at the girl who was the same age my daughter had been when I paid for her first apartment. "Are you going to help?" I asked quietly. Priya laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "I have a stand-up meeting in 2 minutes. That's, operations." She walked out. The others followed her, stepping over the glass, leaving me standing in a puddle of expensive water. As I knelt down to pick up the sharp fragments of glass with my bare hands, I saw a flash of light. I looked up. One of the associates, the young man named Tyler, was holding his phone up in the doorway. He wasn't helping. He was recording a day-in-the-life video for the company's Instagram story. I was the background scenery. The caption, which I saw later on the company feed, read, "Grind never stops at Hollis Tech, #hustle culture." It showed me on my knees, wet and miserable, scrubbing the floor. It wasn't malicious. He didn't hate me. He just didn't see me as human enough to be embarrassed. I went to the supply closet and cried for 10 minutes. Then I dried my eyes, remembered my mission, and told myself, find the mole, save the company. Then you can be Verna again. 2 weeks later, I thought I had found the break I needed. It was 6 p.m. on a Friday. Most of the staff had left for happy hour at the bars along the seaport. The office was quiet, the only light coming from the glowing monitors and the city lights outside. I was vacuuming the hallway outside the main conference room, the war room, they called it. The door was slightly ajar. I heard voices. One was Stella. The other was a deep, gravelly voice I recognized as one of the lead investors, Mr. Henderson. "I need you to be invisible," Stella had told me. "Be my eyes and ears." This was it. If there was a mole, if there was a leak, they would be discussing it now. I turned off the vacuum. I grabbed a rag and a bottle of polish, pretending to clean the doorframe, and leaned in to listen. "The burn rate is too high, Stella," Mr. Henderson was saying. "You're bleeding cash on personnel. The new UI team is costing a fortune." "I know," Stella replied, her voice smooth and confident. But we're cutting costs elsewhere. I've slashed the operations budget to the bone. How? Henderson asked. This building isn't cheap to maintain. Cleaning, maintenance, security, that adds up. I held my breath, waiting for her to mention the mole, waiting for her to say, I have a trusted consultant undercover investigating the leaks. Stella laughed. Oh, don't worry about facilities, she said. I found a creative solution. I have a woman coming in off the books. She's desperate. I'm paying her peanuts. My hand froze on the doorframe. Is she reliable? Henderson asked. Cheap labor usually means stolen laptops. She's harmless, Stella said dismissively. She's actually my mother. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. Your mother? Henderson sounded horrified. You have your mother scrubbing floors? She needed a hobby, Stella said quickly, her tone shifting to that fake, pitiful register she used so well. Honestly, it's a charity case. She lost her business, bad management, couldn't adapt to the market, and she was just sitting at home rotting. I gave her a broom to make her feel useful. It keeps her busy, and it saves us $40,000 a year on a cleaning contract. It's a win-win. Bad management, charity case, rotting. I felt the blood drain from my face, and my legs felt like water. Well, Henderson chuckled, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. Ruthless. I like it. If you can exploit your own family for the bottom line, I feel better about my investment. Whatever it takes, Stella said. That's the motto. I backed away from the door. I moved silently, purely on instinct, my sneakers making no sound on the carpet. I made it to the elevator, just as I heard Stella's chair scrape back. I think I heard the vacuum stop, she said. Let me check if she's still here. I need her to empty the shredder. I jabbed the down button, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Please, please. The elevator door slid open with a cheerful ding. I threw myself inside and hit the lobby button. As the doors began to close, I saw Stella step out into the hallway. She looked right at the elevator, saw the gray polo shirt through the narrowing gap, and didn't look worried that her spy had overheard sensitive intel. She just looked annoyed that I was leaving early. The door shut. I collapsed against the metal wall of the elevator, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor. There was no mole. There was no investigation. There was no mission. She hadn't hired me to save the company. She hadn't hired me because she trusted me. She had hired me because I was the cheapest option on the market, and because humiliating me made her feel powerful. She had taken the woman who taught her how to tie her shoes, the woman who taught her how to read a balance sheet, and had turned her into a punchline for her investors. I drove home in a daze. The rain had turned to sleet, coating my windshield in ice, but I didn't turn on the heat. I deserved the cold. I deserved it for being so stupid. The next morning, the direct deposit hit my account. Amount, $320, $8 an hour. That was my wage. After taxes, it barely covered my gas to drive into the city. I stared at the number. I had built a $2 million consultancy. I had billed $300 an hour for my time. And my daughter, the daughter whose company existed only because I cannibalized my own life, was paying me less than a teenager at a drive-thru. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I just put on the gray polo shirt and drove to the office. I walked past the reception desk, past Tyler, past Priya. I walked straight to the glass-walled office at the end of the hall. Stella was on a call. She saw me coming and waved her hand. Go away. I didn't go away. I opened the door. Mom, I'm on with Tokyo, she hissed, covering the receiver. Get out. Hang up, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had a tone she hadn't heard in 20 years. It was the tone I used when she broke curfew and the tone I used when I fired a negligent employee. Stella blinked, looked at my face, and saw something there that made her nervous. She told Tokyo she would call them back and hung up. What is wrong with you? She snapped. You can't just waltz in here. Your operations. $8 an hour, I said. What? I checked my account. You're paying me $8 an hour. We agreed on 15. Stella rolled her eyes and leaned back in her Aeron chair, a chair that cost $1,200. Mom, we discussed this, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. 15 is for experienced staff. You're still in training. You missed the spot on the mirror in the executive bath last week. You're slow with the recycling. I am a business consultant. Yes, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I am not a maid. You were a consultant, she corrected. Now you're retired. You have no current skills. Honestly, Mom, who else would hire you? You're 62. You don't know the software. You don't know the culture. She stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against the edge, looking down at me. I created this role for you, she said. I did it because I felt sorry for you. You were sitting at home, calling me, and needing attention. I gave you a purpose and a reason to get up in the morning. I gave you $750,000, I whispered, and now you're earning it back, she said coldly. That money is gone, Mom. It's invested. It's in the walls. It's in the servers. You want a return on your investment? Then pick up a mop and help me make this company successful. Stop acting like you're entitled to a free ride just because you wrote a check. She checked her watch. Now, if you're done throwing a tantrum, the conference room needs to be set up for the board meeting. I need water, notepads, and the projector, and clean the whiteboard. It's streaky. She turned her back on me and started typing on her computer. Close the door on your way out, she said. I stood there for a long moment, looked at the back of her head, and looked at the view of the harbor that I had paid for. I could have screamed. I could have quit right there. But as I looked at her, I remembered what Griffin Keats, my old client, had once told me during a hostile takeover negotiation. Never show your hand until you're holding the knife. If I quit now, I was just a crazy old lady storming out. I would be the villain in her story and the unstable mother she complained about to investors. I needed leverage. I needed proof. I swallowed the scream and smoothed the front of my gray polo shirt. Okay, I said quietly. Stella didn't turn around. Good. Hurry up. I walked out of the office, walked down the hall, past Priya, past Tyler, and went into the conference room. I set up the water, aligned the notepads, and cleaned the whiteboard until it gleamed. And then I saw it. Stella's laptop. The other one. The one she used for personal emails. It was sitting on the credenza, charging. And the little green light on the webcam was on. I walked over to it and touched the trackpad. The screen woke up. It wasn't locked. And there, in the Open Mail app, was the subject line that would change everything. Operation Staff Performance Review. I read it. I read the part about contracted help and the part about awkward explanations. And as I sat on my bucket in the supply closet 5 minutes later, crying my eyes out, and the plan began to form. She wanted a janitor? Fine. I would be the best janitor she ever had. I would clean up the trash, and I would start with her. 2 weeks after finding the email, the opportunity for salvation walked through the glass doors. I was in the main conference room, wiping down the whiteboard. My back was to the door, but I heard the receptionist's voice pitch up an octave, the tone she used for VIPs. Mr. Keats, so good to see you. Stella is just finishing up a call. Can I get you anything? No, thank you. I'm a bit early. Griffin Keats. My stomach dropped. Griffin wasn't just an investor. 10 years ago, he had been my client. I had helped him rebrand his logistics firm before he sold it for $80 million. He knew Verna Hollis, the CEO, not Verna the janitor. I froze, gripping the spray bottle. Don't turn around, I commanded myself. Just keep scrubbing. Be the furniture. I heard his footsteps enter the room, the heavy, confident tread of a man who owns the building. Excuse me, he said, his voice deep and familiar. Do you know if there's a charger in here? My phone is dying. I had no choice. I turned around slowly, clutching the rag to my chest like a shield. Our eyes met. For 3 seconds, there was silence. I saw the confusion on his face. He squinted slightly, tilting his head, trying to reconcile the woman in the oversized gray polo shirt with the powerhouse strategist he remembered. He whispered, "It wasn't a question. It was a statement of disbelief. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say, no, I'm Lucy. But my pride wouldn't let me." "Hello, Griffin," I said, straightening my spine as much as I could in orthopedic cleaning shoes. He looked at the spray bottle, looked at the facility's logo on my chest, and looked at my red-chapped hands. "What?" He trailed off, looking around the room as if waiting for a camera crew to jump out. "What is this? Is this a bit? Undercover boss?" "I'm helping my daughter," I said, the rehearsed lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "Operation support, temporary." Griffin didn't buy it. He was too smart. He walked closer, his expression shifting from confusion to something harder. "Anger? Pity? Verna, you ran the best consultancy in Boston. You don't do operation support with a bottle of Windex. What is really going on?" Before I could answer, the door swung open. Stella breezed in, radiating manufactured charm. "Griffin," she exclaimed, extending a hand. "So glad you could make it. I see you've met our operations staff. Lucy, can you give us the room? We have high-level strategy to discuss." "Lucy," Griffin didn't shake her hand. He looked at Stella, then back at me. He saw the way I shrank away and the dismissal in Stella's eyes. "Actually," Griffin said, his voice cool, "I'd like to take a walk. Verna, would you join me? I haven't seen you since the acquisition." Stella laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. "Oh, she's actually very busy, Griffin. The cleaning schedule is tight today." Griffin turned to Stella. He didn't smile. "I wasn't asking for permission," he said. He held the door open for me and looked at Stella. Her face was a mask of shock and fury. I looked at the exit and put the spray bottle down on the mahogany table. Clunk. "I'll take my break now," I said. We walked 3 blocks to a small, quiet coffee shop on Northern Avenue, away from the prying eyes of the tech district. The Boston wind whipped off the harbor, biting and cold, but for the first time in months, I felt warm. Griffin bought me a coffee, black, no sugar, just how I used to drink it during deal closings. He waited until I took the first sip. "Talk," so I did. I told him everything. The $750,000, the sale of my company, the mole lie, the $8 an hour, and the email on the laptop. Griffin listened without interrupting. He stared into his cup, his jaw muscles tightening. When I finished, he looked up. "That's financial elder abuse," he said flatly. "And in Massachusetts, it's a felony." "She's my daughter," I whispered, the old defense rising automatically. "She's a predator," Griffin corrected. "Verna, I looked at her deck before I came in today. Her numbers are fantastic. Too fantastic. She's claiming a 40% margin on the new SaaS product. Is that real?" My consultant brain flickered to life. "Impossible," I said. "The server costs alone would eat 30%, unless she's not paying the vendors." Griffin nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. She's cooking the books to get the Series A funding, and she's using you as cheap labor to keep her burn rate artificially low." He leaned across the table. "You built a legacy, Verna. Are you going to let her turn you into a cautionary tale? Or are you going to remind her who taught her how to count?" I looked at my hands. They were rough and scarred from bleach. But underneath the damage, they were the same hands that had signed million-dollar contracts. "What do I do?" I asked. "I signed an NDA and an employment contract." "You're the janitor," Griffin smiled, a shark-like grin I remembered fondly. "You have the keys to the castle. You empty the trash. You clean the shredders. You're invisible." He slid a business card across the table. "Get me the proof. Not stories. Hard evidence. Show me the real numbers versus the investor numbers. If you bring me the smoking gun, I can stop the funding round. I can force her hand. And then? Then we negotiate," Griffin said. "Not for a raise, for equity, or for exposure." I walked back to the office with the coffee warming my hands and Griffin's words burning in my chest. "You have the keys to the castle." I didn't go back to cleaning the whiteboard. I went to the supply closet and grabbed the master key ring, the one Tyler had given me so I could clean the executive offices after hours. That night, the real work began. I waited until 7 p.m. Stella had left for a dinner date. The developers were in the break room playing foosball with their headphones on. I pushed my cleaning cart down the hallway to the finance director's office. The door was locked. I used my key. Click. I slipped inside and didn't turn on the lights. I worked by the glow of the street lamps outside. I wasn't looking for a mole anymore. I was auditing my own daughter. I went straight to the large industrial shredder in the corner. Stella was paranoid, but she was also lazy. She never emptied the bin herself. She left it for Lucy. The bin was full. I pulled out the basket. The cross-cut mechanism had jammed halfway through, leaving long strips of paper intact at the top of the pile. I pulled them out. They were invoices stapled together with a red sticky note that said, "Do not pay, dispute until Q4. I read them. They were server hosting bills from Amazon Web Services. Past due, $42,000. Past due, $38,000. Notice of termination. She wasn't paying the bills. She was floating the debt to make her cash flow look positive for the investors. I took my phone out. Snap, snap, snap. I put the papers back. Next, I went to the filing cabinet. It was locked. I checked under the desk calendar, the oldest trick in the book. There was a tiny silver key taped to the bottom. Amateurs. I opened the bottom drawer. Contracts. Pending. I flipped through them until I found the client contracts Stella had been bragging about. The 3 major clients she told investors were locked in. I read the terms. Letter of intent only, non-binding. They weren't contracts. They were maybes. But in the investor deck I had seen on Griffin's iPad, she had listed them as recurring revenue. That was fraud. Federal wire fraud if she had sent that deck via email. I took photos of everything. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, cold, and clinical. Suddenly, I heard a noise. Click-clack, click-clack, heels on the linoleum, fast, coming down the hall. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew that walk. It was Stella. She must have forgotten something. I was trapped in the finance office. If she saw me here with the cabinet open, the game was over. She would fire me for cause, sue me for breach of confidentiality, and paint me as a thief. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. The handle jiggled. Locked. I had locked it from the inside. "Hello?" Stella's voice came through the wood, muffled but sharp. "Who's in there?" I scanned the room. No closet, no second exit, just the desk. I dropped to the floor and scrambled into the knee well of the desk, pulling my cleaning cart in front of the opening to shield me. I held my breath. The key turned in the lock. The door opened and the lights flickered on. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing myself against the back panel of the desk, smelling the dust and the ozone of computer wires. Stella walked in. I could see her expensive boots through the gap between the cleaning cart and the desk. She walked to the credenza. I heard the zip of a bag being opened. "Stupid charger," she muttered. She had come back for her laptop charger. She walked back toward the door. She paused right next to the cleaning cart. My mop bucket was there, my spray bottles. "Ugh," she sighed. "Lucy left her crap in here again, sloppy." She kicked the wheel of the cart. It rolled 2 inches. If it rolled another 6 inches, I would be visible. "Don't move. Don't breathe." She didn't kick it again. "Tyler," she yelled into the hallway. "Write up the cleaning staff tomorrow. Leaving equipment in secured offices is a security violation." She turned off the lights. The door closed. The lock clicked. I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. I stayed under that desk for 20 minutes until I was sure, absolutely sure, she was gone. When I crawled out, my knees were trembling, but my resolve was harder than diamond. She wanted to write me up for a security violation? I looked at the phone in my hand, full of photos of unpaid bills and fraudulent contracts. I had just found the biggest security violation in the company, and her name was Stella. I spent the next 3 nights completing the audit. I accessed the payroll logs using the HR director's password, which was taped to her monitor on a sticky note. I found that Stella had given herself a $50,000 bonus last month, the same month she told me she couldn't afford to pay me $15 an hour. I accessed the vendor list and found a consulting payments going to SH Holdings, a shell company registered to Stella's boyfriend. She was siphoning cash out of the company while stiffing Amazon. By Friday morning, I didn't just have evidence. I had a dossier. I printed it all out at the copy center down the street, paying cash, and put everything in a thick black binder. Then I called Griffin. "I have it," I said. "The smoking gun?" "The whole arsenal," I replied. "She's insolvent, Griffin. Technically, she's been bankrupt for 3 months. She's running a Ponzi scheme with vendor credit." "Good," Griffin said. "Meet me at my office in an hour. Wear a suit." "I don't have my suits with me," I said. "They're in storage." "Buy one," he said. "Put it on my card. Verna, you're not going in there as the janitor today. You're going in as the lead investor." I hung up, went to the department store downtown, and bought a navy blue power suit, a silk blouse, and heels that clicked with authority. Then I pulled my hair back into a chignon and put on red lipstick. I looked in the dressing room mirror. The tired woman in the gray polo was gone. Verna Hollis was back, and she was ready to collect her debt. Monday morning in the Seaport District is usually a symphony of low-energy grumbling and the hiss of espresso machines. But when I walked through the double-glass doors of Stella Hollis Tech Solutions at 8:55 a.m., the atmosphere shifted. I wasn't wearing the gray polo shirt, and I wasn't pushing a cart. I was wearing the navy power suit Griffin had helped me pick out. It was tailored, sharp, and cost more than Tyler, the office manager, made in a week. My hair was swept back, and my heels clicked on the polished concrete floor with a rhythm that demanded attention. Click, clack, click, clack. Tyler was at the reception desk scrolling on his phone. He looked up, annoyed and ready to tell Lucy to go empty the trash. His jaw dropped. Lucy?" he stammered, looking at the suit, then at my face, confusion clouding his eyes. "My name is Verna," I corrected, stepping around him without breaking stride. "Good morning, Tyler. Is Stella in?" She's in a prep meeting for the investor call. You can't go in there." He stood up, trying to block my path, but he lacked conviction. He was used to blocking a cleaning lady, not a C-suite executive. "I'm not here to clean, Tyler," I said. "I'm here for a shareholder meeting." I walked down the hallway. Heads turned. Priya looked up from her iced coffee, her eyes widening as she took in the suit, the briefcase, and the sheer audacity of my existence. I didn't look at her. I didn't acknowledge the people who had treated me like furniture for 4 months. I walked straight to the glass-walled office at the end of the hall. Stella was there, pacing and reviewing her pitch deck on an iPad. She looked up as I opened the door. "Mom?" she said, her brow furrowing. "What are you wearing? You're supposed to be restocking the..." She trailed off as she saw the briefcase and the look in my eye. It wasn't the look of a mother. It was the look of a creditor coming to collect. "Sit down, Stella," I said. "Excuse me?" She laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "You work for me. Get out of my office before I call security." I threw the black binder onto her desk. It landed with a heavy, authoritative thud that rattled her pencil cup. "You can call security," I said calmly, taking the seat opposite her. "Or you can open that binder and see why your Series A funding is about to evaporate." Stella looked at the binder, then at me. Curiosity warred with arrogance. She opened it. The first page was a photo of the do not pay invoices from Amazon Web Services. The second page was the letter of intent contract she had listed as recurring revenue. And the third page was a printout of the payroll log showing her $50,000 bonus while the company was technically insolvent. Her face went pale. She flipped through the pages faster. Photos of the burn bin. Screenshots of the inflated user metrics. Where did you get this? She whispered. I work here. I said. I pay attention. You told me to be invisible, Stella. You told me to be your eyes and ears. Well, I was. I leaned back in the chair. I have 4 months of documentation. Every lie you told investors, every vendor you stiffed, and every dollar you siphoned out to your boyfriend's shell company. It's all there. Dated, photographed, and verified. She slammed the binder shut. Her hands were shaking. This is illegal, she hissed. You stole confidential company property. I'll sue you. I'll have you arrested. You could try, I agreed, but discovery works both ways. If you sue me, this binder becomes public record. Is that what you want? Stella stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray harbor, her back rigid. She was trapped, and she knew it. What do you want? She asked, her voice tight. More money? Is that it? You want a raise to $15 an hour? I want 40% equity, I said. She spun around. What? 40%, I repeated. That is the fair market value for my initial $750,000 investment, plus interest and plus 4 months of unpaid consulting work. You're insane, she spat. I'm generous, I corrected. Here is the deal. You sign over 40% of the equity to me today, and I step in as a silent partner. We fire your boyfriend's shell company, we pay Amazon, we restate the earnings honestly, and we fix this mess before the SEC gets involved. And if I say no, then I send a digital copy of this binder to Griffin Keats, I said, and to the 12 other venture capital firms you are pitching this week. Stella stared at me. For a moment, I saw the fear in her eyes. I saw the little girl who used to ask me to check under the bed for monsters. But then, the ego took over. The arrogance that I had inadvertently funded took the wheel. She laughed. You won't do it, she said, shaking her head. You're my mother. You've spent your entire life sacrificing for me. You sold your company for me. You cleaned toilets for me. You're pathetic, Mom. You're addicted to being the martyr. She walked back to the desk and tossed the binder into the trash can. You're fired, she said. Get out of my building. If you send that email, I will tell everyone you're a senile, bitter old woman who got caught stealing office supplies. Who are they going to believe? The tech visionary of the year or the janitor? She pointed to the door. Go home, Mom. Go knit something and leave the business to the professionals. I stood up, picked up my briefcase. I didn't retrieve the binder from the trash. I didn't need it. I had the PDF on my phone. Okay, I said softly. Okay, she sneered. You're right about one thing, Stella, I said, pausing at the door. I did spend my life sacrificing for you. I thought that was my job, but I realized something while I was scrubbing your grout with a toothbrush. What's that? My job is done. I walked out, walked past Tyler, past Priya, and past the break room where they had laughed at me. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. I walked out of the building and into the cold Boston wind and sat on a bench overlooking the water. I took out my phone and opened the draft email I had prepared with Griffin. The subject was, Due Diligence Alert, Stella Hollis Tech Solutions 2. I blind copied the list of 12 major Boston VC firms. My name is Verna Hollis. I am the former CEO of Hollis Strategic Group and the initial seed investor in Stella Hollis Tech Solutions. Attached is a documentation of financial irregularities, insolvency, and fraudulent contract reporting regarding the current Series A round. I hovered my thumb over the button. Stella had bet everything on the idea that I loved her too much to hurt her. She had bet on the mother. She forgot about the CEO. I pressed send. I watched the progress bar turn blue. Message sent. Then I blocked Stella's number. I hailed a cab. Take me to State Street, I told the driver. I wasn't going home to knit. I had a meeting with Griffin Keats to register my new LLC. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. By the time I reached Griffin's office, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Not from Stella, but from the industry. Griffin met me in the lobby. He was grinning. Did you do it? He asked. It's done. Check your email, he said. I opened my inbox. One of the investors, a man named David Wright from Seaport Capital, had replied to all, including Stella. Miss Hollis, thank you for this disclosure. Based on the attached invoices and the misrepresentation of the contract status, Seaport Capital is formally withdrawing our term sheet effective immediately. We will be conducting an internal review of why our initial diligence missed this. 2 hours later, another email. Then another. The funding round didn't just fail, it imploded. I was sitting in Griffin's conference room, signing the incorporation papers for Hollis Partners, when the voicemail notification popped up on my laptop. It was from a blocked number. I played it on speaker. You witch! Stella's voice screamed, distorted by sobbing and rage. You destroyed it. Everyone is pulling out. Amazon just shut down the servers because someone sent them the photos of the unpaid bills. How could you do this to your own daughter? You're ruining my life. I listened to the whole thing, listened to the panic, and listened to the entitlement. I hope you're happy, she screamed. You don't have a daughter anymore. I stopped the playback. Are you okay? Griffin asked gently. I looked at the incorporation papers in front of me, and I looked at the new logo we had sketched out. I'm fine, I said. Actually, I'm better than fine. I have a lead on a client. Oh? The client Stella lied about, I said. The one with the $300,000 contract she faked. They need a real vendor, and I know exactly what they need because I read their requirements in Stella's trash. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of the VP of operations at that company. Hello, I said when he answered. My name is Verna Hollis. I believe you've been sold a product that doesn't exist. I'd like to offer you a solution that does. In just 3 days, I secured $180,000 in confirmed contracts. I rented a small office in downtown Boston, not a glass tower, but a solid brick and beam space in the financial district. I hired 2 junior associates. Not the cool kids with the ironic t-shirts, but 2 women in their 40s who had been laid off by tech bros and were hungry to prove themselves. Within 2 weeks, Hollis Partners was operational. We were lean, but we were efficient. And we were profitable from day one because I didn't spend money on San Pellegrino or Aeron chairs. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I was working late when my office phone rang. It was Priya, the project manager who had called me Lucy. Miss Hollis? She asked, her voice small. Speaking. Hi, it's Priya from Stella's. I heard you opened a new firm. I did. I was wondering if you were hiring, she said quickly. The paychecks stopped clearing 2 weeks ago. Stella is locking the doors. She says it's a restructuring, but she's selling the furniture on Craigslist. I leaned back in my chair. I am hiring, I said. But I have a very specific culture here, Priya. We treat everyone with respect, from the CEO to the cleaning staff. Can you handle that? Yes, she whispered. I can, I promise. Send me your resume, I said. But Priya? Yes. My name is Verna. Don't forget it again. I hung up. I looked out the window. The snow was melting and the city was waking up from the long winter. Stella's company was dead. The unicorn had been put down. But I was just getting started. 3 months later, I returned to the building in the Seaport District one last time. I wasn't there to clean. I wasn't there to work. I was there for the auction. Stella Hollis Tech Solutions had filed for Chapter 7 liquidation on a rainy Tuesday. The unicorn had run out of magic dust. After the funding round collapsed and Amazon pulled the servers, the company had lasted exactly 4 weeks before the landlord changed the locks. Now, the contents of the office were being sold to the highest bidder to pay off the secured creditors. I walked through the double glass doors. The logo on the wall, the vinyl sticker I had once polished with Windex, was peeling at the corners. The lobby was filled with strangers, bargain hunters, office managers from other startups, and liquidators with clipboards. The office smelled different. It didn't smell like coffee and ambition anymore. It smelled of dust and failure. I walked past the reception desk where Tyler used to sit. It was tagged with a yellow lot number. number 402. I walked into the break room. The white granite countertop was cluttered with price tags. The expensive Italian espresso machine, the one that required special pods, was unplugged and sitting crookedly on a pallet. And there in the corner was the glass-fronted refrigerator, the one I had stocked with San Pellegrino. A man in a windbreaker was opening it and checking the seals. "Good condition," he muttered to his partner. "We can get $500 for it." I stared at the fridge. I remembered the cold glass bottles. I remembered the way Stella had blocked me from the investor's view, and I remembered the shame. But as I stood there, wearing my tailored wool coat, holding a latte I had bought with my own company card, I couldn't find the shame anymore. It had evaporated, leaving only a quiet and hollow sadness. I walked to the executive office at the end of the hall. The glass walls were smudged. No one had cleaned them in weeks. The room was empty except for the Aeron chair and the desk. I ran my hand along the edge of the desk, the place where I had thrown the black binder, the place where my daughter had told me I was pathetic. "Excuse me, ma'am," a liquidator said, poking his head in. "We're locking this room up. Are you interested in the desk?" I looked at the desk. It was beautiful, mahogany and modern. "No," I said softly. "It has bad energy." I walked out of the building and didn't look back. The bankruptcy proceedings were public record. I read the filings online in my new office, sipping tea while the rain lashed against the windows of the financial district. It was a bloodbath. The company had burned through $5.2 million in seed capital in 18 months. The list of creditors was pages long: Amazon, Salesforce, the landlord, and the cleaning service she had fired before hiring me. And there, at the very bottom of the list of unsecured creditors, was a single entry: $750,000. Unsecured. That meant I was last in line. After the banks, after the lawyers, after the taxman, there were zero assets left. I would never see a penny of that money. My retirement fund, my safety net, the fruit of 28 years of labor. It was gone, vaporized into ergonomic chairs and kombucha taps. I stared at the screen and waited for the rage to return. I waited for the panic that used to wake me up at 3 a.m. But it didn't come. Instead, I looked around my new office. It wasn't as fancy as Stella's. The carpet was a little worn, the furniture was secondhand, but the phones were ringing. In the outer office, Priya was laughing on a call with a client. Beside her, one of the junior associates was drafting a strategy deck. We were billing $80,000 a month. We were profitable, and we were real. I realized then that Stella hadn't taken my future. She had only taken my money. And money, unlike dignity, could be earned back. I closed the browser tab. I had work to do. I didn't hear from Stella for 6 months. She had vanished. Her social media went dark. Her phone number was disconnected. Rumors circulated in the Boston tech scene. She had moved to New York. She had moved to Austin. She was living in a van. I didn't investigate. I didn't hire a private detective. I let her go. Then, on a crisp October afternoon, a package arrived at my office. It was a small, padded envelope. No return address. Just a Boston postmark. Priya brought it in with the mail. "No sender," she noted, putting it on my desk. "Want me to open it?" "No," I said, a strange instinct prickling at the back of my neck. "I've got it." I waited until I was alone, then used my letter opener to slit the top. Inside, there was no letter. No long, tear-stained apology. No excuses. There was just a single personal check. It was from a standard bank book, the kind you get when you open a basic checking account. The address printed in the corner was an apartment complex in Dorchester, a working-class neighborhood far from the seaport luxury condos. Pay to the order of Verna Hollis, amount $500. Memo payment 1 of $1,500. And wrapped around the check was a pay stub. It was for Stella Hollis. Employer, The Gap. Position, retail associate. Hourly rate, $16.50. I stared at the pay stub. I looked at the hours listed. 48 hours. She was working retail. She was standing on her feet all day, folding clothes, dealing with rude customers, and cleaning up fitting rooms. She was doing the work. I looked at the check again. $500. It was a fraction of what she owed me. At this rate, without interest, it would take her a lifetime to pay me back. Mathematically, it was an insult. But emotionally, it was a white flag. It meant she wasn't asking for a handout. It meant she wasn't trying to scam another investor. It meant she had finally learned the lesson I had tried to teach her when she was 5 years old and again when she was 30. Value is created, not claimed. I didn't cash the check. I went to the supply closet, my new supply closet, which was stocked with high-quality supplies and organized by a professional cleaning service that I paid a living wage. I took out a simple black frame and framed the check. I hung it on the wall behind my desk, right next to the Businesswoman of the Year award I had won in 1998. It wasn't a trophy of my victory over my daughter. It was a reminder that people can change, but only if you let them hit the floor first. If I had saved her again, if I had written one more check, she would still be the monster in the Seaport Tower. By letting her fall, I had given her the chance to become a person, a real person. That evening, I left the office early. I drove my modest SUV, bought with cash from the new company's profits, back to my condo in Brookline. I stopped at the market on the way and bought fresh pasta, a bottle of Barolo, and a baguette. When I got home, I opened the French doors to my balcony. The air was crisp, smelling of fallen leaves and the distant salt of the ocean. I had transformed the balcony. Where I used to have a single withered plant, I now had a garden, hardy mums in pots, rosemary bushes, and a trellis with ivy climbing up the brickwork. I poured a glass of wine and sat in the wicker chair, wrapping a cashmere blanket around my legs, and watched the sun set over Boston. I thought about Stella, probably folding sweaters in a back room in Dorchester right now, her feet aching and her pride stinging. I hoped she was tired and that her back hurt, because that pain was the feeling of character growing back. I thought about the woman I was in the gray polo shirt, the woman who hid in a closet and cried. That woman was gone. I had scrubbed her away. In her place was a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. A woman who knew that family is a heavy word, but self-respect is heavier. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like grapes and earth, not like bitterness. I was alone. I didn't have a husband. I didn't have a relationship with my daughter, and I didn't have my original retirement fund. Some people would look at me, eating dinner for one 63 years old, and see a tragedy. They would see a woman who had lost everything. But as I watched the city lights flicker on, one by one, illuminating the skyline I had helped build, I knew the truth. I hadn't lost everything. I had simply taken out the trash. And the space that was left, it wasn't empty. It was free. You've made it to the end. You walked through the fire with Verna, but I have to be honest. It breaks my heart when I see people listen to these stories, feel these heavy emotions, and then just walk away. No subscription, no support, just silence. It feels like I'm pouring my soul into a void, working days and nights to bring these voices to life, only to be met with ghost viewers. Please, don't be another ghost. If this story kept you company, don't just take it and leave. You owe it to the story to leave a mark. A subscribe, a super thanks, or even just commenting your city. Tell me where in the world you are listening from. Let me know exactly where my voice is traveling so I know I'm not alone in this. And if you aren't ready to leave yet, don't. There are 2 more real-life journeys right here on your screen. Pick one. Stay with me a little longer. Don't let the silence win. Until next time.